What is up, New York Giants fans, Big Blue Nation? It's Rob and Donald. This is Nerding Out Sports, and it is time. We've prolonged it for too long. We've got to talk about it. The end of the season. New York Giants blown out by the Philadelphia Eagles to end what was a very, very, very fun, exciting, unexpected season. But it all came to a crashing halt last week in Philly. I just want to come out and say right off the bat, the result does not change my thought about the season, right? It was still great. I'm bought in. I'm all in on what this team's going to do. However, I'm kind of pissed at the way they played. And you can still be proud of this team for what they accomplished this year, but you can also say that I'm genuinely pissed off that they went out and played the way they did on that kind of stage. The one thing I did not want them to do was get blown out because I didn't think we were going to beat them. I picked us to lose. I didn't think we were going to beat them. I just did not want to get blown out. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So there are a lot of people out there on, in the fan base that are saying, how can you be mad about that we lost? The season was so great. No. We're not saying anything about the season. What I'm saying is I'm very upset, pissed even about their performance or lack of a performance on Saturday night. Would you agree with that, or am I maybe being too harsh on the team?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you, but it took me about 24 hours for me to just kind of, I don't know, I almost flush it a little bit. It's like at the end of the day, when you see yourself getting completely outclassed, it's hard to get too emotionally invested. I felt that we were completely outclassed from the opening kickoff, and so it was pretty much done and dusted by the first quarter, really. But yeah, I was pissed after the game. I was like, what was that I just watched? That was not Giant football. That's never acceptable because nobody played well. Nobody. None of the coaches played well. The only people that showed up were two running backs, Saquon Barkley and Matt Breida. And that is it. Everybody else stunk. And that's not really acceptable. It's a playoff game. It's a divisional playoffs. It shouldn't be that kind of score. It shouldn't. It should have been competitive. And it wasn't competitive from the kickoff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to critique certain people's performances, but it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate them over the long haul. And it doesn't mean that it has changed my view on us going forward. But for that game, yeah, I can critique them. And I will.
Right. Like you mentioned, Barkley, Breida. I would put Andrew Thomas because he's always in that category. Yeah, but that's it. Like nobody else showed up. The defense was non-existent. The offense, we had one drive where we put up a touchdown. That's because there was the Wildcat formation and nothing worked. Like it was poorly coached. It was poorly played. And it's just like they weren't ready. And that was, like I said at the start, the one thing I did not want them to do was look like they didn't belong. Was look like they were not I know we're not anywhere near Philly in terms of talent, but had we lost, let's say 31-20 or 31-17, and we kept it remotely close, but it was just Philly's talent took over and it was just too much for us to overcome. You're like, all right, that makes sense because they're better than us. They have too much talent. And at least it was a respectable fight for 3 quarters or 2.5, whatever it may be. And it's just, they're just too much. They're too good for us to be able to sustain that kind of a fight for 60 minutes. But to be beat up like 2 plays into the game, they hit the 40-yard drive, a 40-yard big play to Smith, I think it was. And you're like, oh, this is how it's going to go. And then boom, right into the end zone. And then the next drive, the Giants just 3 and out. And then, oh, they're going to score again. You're like, it's 14-0. And what I said in the pregame was Wink cannot afford, the Giants cannot afford to go down 14-0 to the Eagles and expect to come back. And it was in a blink, they were down 14-0. And that was like, I can't get upset right now because they're just not ready. They're not prepared. And I didn't want to get myself mad. So I was just kind of like eerily calm watching this thing. And I'm like, I have to watch the whole game because I I have to. It's just the fan in me is going to force myself to go through this pain. But I wasn't getting mad. I was like, this is how it ends. Then the next morning I woke up and I was pissed. I'm like, no, I can't have any pride right now in the way they played that game. I can have pride about the season. I can have pride about the way things are moving forward, but I can't be proud of that last Saturday because it was atrocious football.
Oh, it was so bad. I think that we were overmatched in every single category, and that's something that concerned me. So I still expect about a third of our roster, if not more, to be overhauled in the offseason coming. But I felt that Dable had his worst coached game. I felt like Martindale had his worst schematic game. And Mike Kafka had a dreadful day. And Evan Neal had a horrendous day. He was getting lit up like a Christmas tree at right tackle. And on defense, Julian Love was getting lit up like a Christmas tree. He was terrible, Julian Love. He was getting roasted out there in the secondary. I mean, you can just go through it and you could be actually appalled at the standard of performance. It was appalling. It just wasn't representative. But it still wasn't even the worst loss of that weekend. For me, the Bills getting completely outclassed in their home field is much worse than the Giants because they're meant to go to the Super Bowl. They were a Super Bowl built team and they got completely manhandled out there by Joe Burrow. The Giants, let's be fair, they were meant to win 5-6 games tops. They won 9. They went into Minnesota, beat Minnesota, got to Philadelphia, got into the final 8 teams. For me, incredible achievement. So it doesn't really change how I view things, and that's how I'm tempering my expectations a little bit. It's sort of like, you know what? Hey, listen, tip your cap. We got completely outcoached in every facet of the game, but this Eagles team is legit, absolutely legit, terrifyingly good. And it was only delusion that I actually thought the Giants might win that game. There was really nothing. We were worse in every single position. Let's be fair. Every single position, we were worse.
Right. And like you think about it, the Eagles, and I don't know why this is becoming a thing lately where people are like, the Eagles didn't have many expectations going into the year. No, everyone thought they were going to be a good team. I don't think anyone thought they were going to have, 13, 14 wins, but people were expecting Philly to be there at the end because in the NFC, you had the Rams, defending champions. People thought they would be better. Obviously, they weren't. You had the 49ers. They were expected to be really good. The Packers are always expected to be good. And Philly was the most talented roster by far. Once they added A.J. Brown, you're like, who's stopping that offense? And then you get James Bradbury. They already had a really good pass rush. They already had a good secondary. It's like, how do you match that in the NFC? And all of a sudden, people – or like Shannon Sharp is saying that no one thought Philly was going to make it to the NFC Championship game. What? Like, look at that roster. How do you not expect them to at least make it to the NFC Championship game? They're stacked. So when you look at their team, they have good coaching. They have good talent. The Giants have good coaching, and we've proved that good coaching, seems like the Giants and Jaguars this year proved that good coaching can take you pretty far in this league. However, when you combine that with really, really freaking good talent, it's going to beat you every single time. And the Eagles have both. They have great coaching. Sirianni's a hell of a coach. I hate giving this guy's credit, but they have a hell of a coach. They have a hell of a coaching staff, and they have a hell of a team. So for the Giants to have, if they would have overcome that Saturday night on the road in Philly against a team that we haven't been able to beat there in a decade, it would have took a miracle, an absolute miracle to win that game. And we got outclassed, we got blown out, we got the brakes beat off of us. And I think hopefully it's going to be something that's humbling because we heard it in Joe Shane's press conference, which we'll get to later on in the show. He mentioned there's a big difference in talent between these two teams. And that's something that we're going to have to continue to be patient with because we're not going to get there in 1 year. The fact that we got this far with this team is special in its own right. But over the coming years, we can hope to be there, maybe follow that kind of Philly model because they became this uber talented roster. It wasn't like it happened overnight. They already had a good team last year, and they added some really good pieces to make it even better. If you think about what they have, an all-pro offensive line. I mean, 5 Pro Bowlers. They have an MVP candidate at quarterback. They have a damn good running game. They have a hell of a group of receivers, a damn good tight end. Their defense is stacked. I mean, you're not beating that. And I don't even know if San Francisco can beat that right now. So the fact that the Giants, I can't stress enough how proud I am of the team for what they accomplished this year. But again, the season ending the way it did, it left a really bad taste in my mouth, and I'm not going to let my pride get in the way of critiquing the team. And that's something that I think we can both agree on is for one night, we are incredibly angry at this team. But the overall scope of the season, we're jumping to the moon right now in excitement for the future of the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm incredibly angry. I'm kind of was a little bit apathetic after you went 14-zip down. I was like, and then once Daniel Jones threw that interception, it was game over as far as I was concerned because they were going to score. We knew it. So the game was over, so it was hard to get too invested. I felt a little bit lost, though. I was like, is that it? After so much energy and after so much fun, and we've all been so invested in this week-to-week basis, it felt weird that it was all over so quick. It felt quick, but it was actually death by a million cuts the way the Eagles just systematically tore us apart. So let's start breaking down the positions a little bit. We'll start with the offense. What was your thoughts on the offense?
Is there a curse word that I can use that YouTube won't hit us with something? Because I don't think we're in that category that we'd get affected, but fucking bad. Like it was just bad. Except for Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley, and even Mark Lewinsky graded out pretty well, but it didn't matter. The Giants had they were better in the blowout in the Meadowlands than they were on Saturday night. They didn't do anything right. Daniel Jones, it looked like he reverted back to last year because he was missing reads, something that he was not doing all season long, or at least after the first few weeks. He was not reading the field well. He missed a wide open Slayton. Just everything looked bad. Evan Neal, I'm going to criticize him for this game, but I'm still not going to say he's a bust or whatever because I think he's going to be better. He should be better next year. Maybe that's a coaching thing, but the line wasn't good except for one player. The running game didn't get going until it was too late. The receivers they were just shadowed by 2 great corners. Everything was bad. Everything was simply bad. And it's hard to find, even with that one good drive where Saquon had the big run and it was finished off with a touchdown, it's hard to find any sort of positive outside of that from this offense. Nothing looked good. Absolutely nothing.
I know. Daniel Jones had his worst game of the year, in my opinion. What was concerning was how he panicked. Once the Eagles took away his options, his safety net, he looked like he was a deer in the headlights, and he behaved like that. He was making really bad decisions. Like, for instance, when he ran out of the pocket and was about to get sacked, he ran out of the pocket. He could have ran out of bounds. Instead of running out of bounds, he should have thrown the ball out of bounds, and it would have been 3rd and 1. But live to see another day. But he didn't do that. He ran out of bounds and lost 5 or 6 yards, and that was bizarre. I don't understand the decision making. That's panic. It's complete panic right there. And then obviously the next throw was dreadful. Missed the open guy entirely. So We saw that. Then we saw him throw a bad interception, and he was missing reads. And a lot of it was down to the fact that the Eagles clearly had a game plan. Isaiah Hodgins shut him down entirely. Don't let Hodgins beat you. And that's what they just completely shut down. Once Hodgins was taken away, I don't think Daniel Jones knew what to do, because that was his guy. It's been his guy for like half the year. So Darius Slayton, dude, I don't know, man. Like, towards the end of the year, the old Darius Slayton came back. Like, he was dropping everything. He's got hands like feet. He just did not look good either, to be honest. And then you got Richie James, who dropped that wide open touch. That was the only good pass that Daniel Jones threw in that game. And Richie James somehow managed to drop it. It was a nailed-on touchdown, and he dropped a terrible drop. Everybody played like shit. Let's face it. Kafka had a terrible day. I don't know what Kafka's game plan was. That's another thing I'd like to bring up. Was what was the game plan? Did they have a game plan? Was there any preparation for this game? Because they just didn't look like they had a plan to beat the Eagles. Maybe they had a plan. Maybe it was the same plan as against Minnesota. It was a quick game. But once the Eagles jumped the quick game and shut it down, the Giants didn't have a plan B. And you should be having a plan B as a coaching staff. For me, Saquon Barkley was the only guy that showed up. So why did they wait till the third or fourth quarter, late in the third quarter, for them to get Saquon involved? I would have gone Saquon involved earlier, because at least control the clock, because they're getting as you say, the brakes beaten off them. The one way in which you can do that to avoid that and take the sting out of the Eagles' attack is to kind of control the clock a little bit. But they didn't do that. They put the whole thing on Daniel Jones' hands, and Daniel Jones, he couldn't handle it. It's one thing to beat the very worst defense in football in the Vikings, but it's another thing to take on the Philadelphia Eagles, and they didn't have a game plan for it, and they should have used Saquon Barkley more, in my opinion, and I think it wouldn't have changed the outcome, but it might have made sure we didn't get beat by 100 points, because that's what it felt like.
Right.
I think that they made a mistake there. It was poorly coached game, and it was a poorly quarterback game. It was the worst I've seen Daniel Jones in a long time. And that kind of performance does make you consider exactly how much you want to pay him in the offseason, but we'll get into that later. So we got the offense covered. It was a mess.
Well, I want to cut you off for just a second, because I'm looking back at the first drive, and that was where Jones kind of ran out of bounds, like you mentioned earlier, right? And he cost a few yards, and they went for it on 4th and 8, and they took a sack.
Well, actually, that was actually later what I was referring to, but yeah, there was that as well. Brian Dable actually hurt us with the 4th and 8.
Yeah, like, why not kick it? At least it's 57. You think Gano can make that? If not, just punt it. Why would you give them short? It was 4th and 8, and he went for it. And then later in the game, he didn't go for it on 4th.
Oh my God. That's what I'm talking about. It was a badly coached game.
They were kind of driving on that first possession. They started with the run, and then they had the big play to Richie James. The back-to-back plays, they had 12 and 16 yards to Richie James and Lawrence Cager. And you're like, all right, if they can respond, maybe we can hang for a little bit before it gets out of hand. But then the 3rd and 4th down sequence, back-to-back sacks, it's like, and then you go for it on 4th down, like, at least attempt the field goal, get some points. You trust Graham Gano. He hasn't let you down before since you've gotten him. It was very, very strange how they coached in the first quarter, going for it on 4th and 8, and then later in the game where it was still maybe a miracle can get you back into it, you punted. It was just like they gave up. They gave up at that point later on in the game.
Now, Paul Dottino said on the Giants, and the Giants post game, he said that I think Gano was around about 53 in pregame warmups. So I think it was maybe a calculated decision by Dable not to do that. But then again, what was the alternative? That you go in 4th and 8? Do we have the offense that can do 4th and 8 against the Philadelphia Eagles?
Right.
I would say no. But the another thing was obviously they didn't want to punt it either because they don't trust the Scottish Hammer. Because I think the Scottish Hammer would have punted it right in the end zone and the Eagles would have taken it at the 20. But I would still rather that than what we did because that was just bad. It was just bad. Chasing points in the first quarter, one scoring down, that sends a message that, A, you think you're going to get absolutely destroyed in this game. 1. 2, you don't trust your defense. And all that stuff just sends a bad message. And 3, it sends a message of panic. Why do you want to send a message of panic? You want to like at least pretend that everything is going just as you had anticipated it. Pretend that till it's reality. You can't just go, oh my God, we're done 7-0. Let's start panicking and start doing some crazy shit. That was a mistake. It was a complete mistake. Never gonna give them the benefit of the doubt for that one. That was just bad.
You can't.
And it put us in the hole because then the Eagles had the ball at the 40. And in 2-3 plays, bish bash bosh, they're right down in the red zone. So terrible mistake.
So let's talk about the defense now, since we've already come to the conclusion that the offense was, in a word, bad. What about the defense? Because they didn't let Jalen Hurts go crazy. He only threw for $154, but he was 16 of 24. But they got absolutely creamed again on the ground. Gainwell, who I didn't even know who he was, 112 yards. Miles Sanders adds 90. Jalen Hurts gets 34. And then, of course, just because they want to play games with us, why don't we just put Boston Scott in there to score another touchdown?
That was a troll job. That was a troll job from Sirianni.
268 yards on the ground.
Sirianni trolled the Giants by having Boston Scott score that touchdown. That was a troll. Yep. That was like, he's going to do it again. That was Sirianni.
He went for two later in the game just because he wanted to. That's what really stings me, is that he put in Boston Scott when he didn't need to, but he said, fuck him, I'm going to do it anyway. And then he went for 2 and he was up by like 28. I'm like, he's toying with us. That's why I was like, at the end, when I went to sleep, I was like, whatever. It's a great season. We'll be back next year, hopefully even better. But then when I woke up, I was pissed because I had to work early in the morning, and I was there like, Nick Sirianni was playing fucking games with us. This guy has zero respect. It's like, fuck, I'm mad. And I just didn't want to speak to anybody the rest of the day because now I was starting to piss myself off 24 hours later, essentially. And now the more I think about it, I'm like, he really was just toying with us. And that's where I thought about it. The Giants really had no shot to win this game at all. The Eagles were ready.
Sirianni had zero respect for the Giants. Zero. None. He was clowning around on the sidelines, making a complete jackass of himself. He has zero respect for us. Zero. And he made sure we knew about it. Like, why are you even having a formation where you go for it for 2 when you're up freaking 100 points? I mean, that's just it's rubbing it in. It's just making a mockery of the Giants, and that sucks. It really sucks. And we didn't deserve that. But we played like it. So I guess, you get what you deserve in that league. But it was tough to endure. They just ran right down our throats. Yep. And it was the easiest. It was just run right up the middle, outside, inside zone, just run. And the Giants just let it happen, man. Nobody stopped them. Nobody. It was embarrassing. What about when Daniel Jones threw that interception? That next possession, the Eagles ran it 6 straight times to Sanders. 6 straight times.
Yep.
And it was basically almost a first down every single carry. First down. He just ran right down our throats. And they were already in the red zone. And then yes, mix in a little bit of Jalen Hurts, mix in a little bit of Boston Scott, and touchdown. It was
actually the next drive.
They didn't even need to pass the ball. If they wanted to, they could have gone 100% run. They could have gone, we're not going to pass the ball at all in this game. You guys are just going to run every single possession, every single down, and they would have still had the same score because we couldn't freaking stop them. Even though we knew what was coming, we still couldn't stop them. Their offensive line is insane. Absolutely insane.
Giants had 1 sack in the game and barely any pressure at all.
None.
I don't know who McKinney got the sack. It wasn't even a defensive front. It was the safety who got the sack.
And there was 0 pressures, 0 quarterback hits. And then that's the only time that I will criticize Wink Martindale this year. Again, what was the game plan against the Philadelphia Eagles? What was it? It was not to be found. There was 0 game plan. Wink Martindale's bag is his pass rush and his creative blitzing schemes. What was that? There was no pass rush. It was all cover 2. It was all zone. What was that? All soft zone. What? Why?
And the thing is about that, which pissed me off, is because the Eagles are the type of offense that even though they can beat the brakes off of you any way they want to, they're smart. They're going to take what you give them. If you're playing 6 yards or 7 yards off the receivers, fine. We'll just throw a slant and we'll turn it into a 15-yard gain. You don't want to stop the run? Fine. We're just going to run it right through the middle of your defense. We're taking what you give us, and guess what? They're still putting up 30-plus points a game on you. So that tells you everything you need to know about where they are and where we are and where we hope to be sooner than later. But you mentioned that drive. It was after the Jones pick, they had punted. It was the drive after that they gave it to Sanders 6 straight times. And it doesn't matter anyway because you're right. 6 straight runs. It was like we bring up Madden all the time. And what's up to Luca in the chat? Thank you for popping in. In Madden, where you play on rookie and you turn the sliders all the way up for run blocking, that's what it looked like because we couldn't stop the freaking run. It was upsetting. Luca says Giants are heading in the right direction. We are. We absolutely are. But Saturday night, it looked like we were treading backwards. It's like if there was a word for the game plan, or 2 words, it was just go home. That seemed like the game plan. Because it looked like they didn't want to play anymore. It was just like, let's just forget it. And I hate to say that because I've been so invested in this team, but it looked like their game plan was, we're done. And it felt like they just knew they didn't have a shot. Once they went down 7-0, like you mentioned, Jones was panicking. The coaching was just weird. The defense was already getting beat up. It was like they just looked like they didn't know what to do. And against the Vikings, they were down 7-0, and they just seemed calm. It's like, okay, we're ready for this because the Vikings defense isn't good. But 7-0 down to the Eagles, it might have been 30-0 at that point.
It was so weird. It was such a weird game. We just got completely clowned out there. So, yeah, we've covered the offense, the defense. No one really showed up. So who is your LVP? Who gets the L?
For the entire team or for just the offense?
Entire team.
I want to say Evan Neal, but kind of like I understand that it's been such a rough year. Daniel Jones played terribly. Slayton didn't play well. No one really played well. I guess I'm going to give the L. If I got to give it to a player, I'm going to say Jones because I needed him to step up in some capacity, even if we still lost by multiple touchdowns. I just needed him to be like the Daniel Jones that we were seeing towards the end of the year, where he was calm and collected, and even if he was down, he was going to try to fight to get you back. I didn't see that. And that's part of the progression is even in a game like this, you want to see the resolve that he might have, even if it doesn't work out in the end. You want to see that fight to try to bring you back. I guess I got to go Daniel Jones. If not, it'd be Evan Neal. But I'll put it on 8. I've been defending him so much. I'm gonna give him the criticism as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I thought Daniel Jones was dreadful. One of the worst quarterback games. And it was just bad. He just played like shit. And what you're right. Part of the progression is you kind of want to see how he does against the top defense. And he looked overmatched, and he looked overwhelmed, if anything. Now you also have to bear in mind that he didn't have any options, but he just made the wrong decisions, and that's what I was more concerned about. So it was less about the stat line, and it was just his decision making was really bad. But if you've gone Daniel Jones, I'll go Evan Neal just for fairness. Evan Neal was lit up like a Christmas tree. He played absolutely horrific at right tackle. And the scary thing about Evan Neal is that he's getting worse. He's not getting better. You should be seeing that progression. So people are saying, oh, but what about Andrew Thomas rookie year? Well, Andrew Thomas rookie year started bad for the first 3 or 4 weeks, but then he started to see the light, and then it clicked with him. And then by the second half of the year, he was good, right? And then it's been a constant progression since then. He was great, and now he's an all-pro. So it was always a progression with him, including his rookie year. You saw the progression. Evan Neal, I have not seen that progression, and that is what I'm concerned about. He's had 1 or 2 games where he's like, you're thinking, okay, there's something here. I think his run blocking's okay, but his pass protection's bad. A lot of it is technique work. I don't like his footwork. I also his timing shot because he gets caught off sides a lot. So there's a bunch of things that that needs to be worked on. I think it will be worked on in the offseason with him. I think a good offseason program, and I think you'll see a better Evan Neal. But I'm a little concerned. Are you going to see a top 10 NFL draft right tackle at Evan Neal? And at the moment, it doesn't look like it. So that needs to be really worked on. I hope he can turn around because I do have faith in him, just like you do. But he was bad. He gave Daniel Jones no help whatsoever on that side, and he was constantly running around Daniel Jones. So, there's always a cause and effect, and part of the Daniel Jones panic was the fact that the right side of his offensive line completely broke down, and he didn't know what to do. So, yeah, that's on Evan Neal. So Daniel Jones and Evan Neal definitely get the L.
The thing with Neal is because I know everyone wants to compare it to Thomas because he was our last first-round pick, but Thomas had to go through COVID. The COVID shortened. There was barely any training camp and whatever, and you expected the slow start. The one thing I will say about Evan Neal is, even though his worst game was week 3 against Dallas, right, early in the season, and then he got a little bit better, and then he got hurt. We can't forget he missed 4 or 5 games with a knee injury. That can't be too good for an offensive lineman. He's a big dude. So I'm not trying to say that's the excuse, but it has to play a part of it. Also, the coaching. If they're seeing, if people like us, who we don't have tape experience, we're not coaches in the NFL. We don't have that. We don't have anywhere close to the experience these guys do. But people like Bobby Skinner, they're pointing it out week after week after week after week. What is Evan Neal doing wrong? What are our coaches not doing? So do we need a change in offensive line coach? Because I think it's Bobby Johnson now, right? What exactly is he doing? Because Evan Neal should not be a player, because this is the guy that was for a while talked about as potentially being the number 1 overall pick, not just the number 1 tackle, the number 1 overall pick. There's something there. So, the NFL is a tough transition. He was left tackle and he's moving to the right side. That's a tough thing. He's going against some really good players like Hassan Reddick and Daniil Hunter and whoever the hell the Cowboys want to throw at him, whether it's Lawrence or Parsons. He's going to go against elite talent at this stage of his career at the NFL level. But what are the coaches not seeing that if Bobby Skinner can see it? I'm not trying to downplay him, but Bobby Skinner's pointing it out week after week. This is what Evan Neal's not doing. This is what he's not doing. This is what he's not improving on. And our coaches are not seeing that. It's glaring because we're looking at it, and I'm not an offensive line coach in the slightest. And I'm like, yeah, he's right. He's getting beat by the same move every single week. So is it a coaching thing? Do we need a new coach because if Buffalo was willing to let this guy go? I know Daboll he brought a lot of guys in with him from his old staff, but maybe they need to go in a different direction.
I don't know if it's coaching or if it's or is Evan Neal himself. That's what we have to figure out. But you might be onto something. But I mean, if you look at the offensive line in general, you also have to give them credit for the week prior, where everybody played well. Well, Evan Neal wasn't great, but everyone else on the offensive line was terrific against the Vikings. And so that, you'd also have to look at the coach for that as well. So, hey, maybe, for every good, there's bad. I don't really know whether it was the coach or not doing his job. We'll have to figure that out. Let's give it another year with Johnson and see if he can work on Evan Neal. But it is their responsibility to fix him because, as you're right, talent-wise, he was right there amongst the very, very top picks in the NFL draft. And he's not played even anywhere near that. He's played like you took a flyer on somebody in the second or third round. That's how he's playing. And that's kind of scary to me. So
Tyree Phillips was better than him.
Yes, he was. It's kind of scary. Okay, so we've done the LVP. Who gets it's a kind of a laughable game award. The game award. Who gets the game award?
Saquon or Andrew Thomas. You can kind of just flip a coin and then know whether it really wouldn't be a bad choice. But because we don't score without him, it's got to be Saquon. Yeah. He's the only one that showed up, even though we were down by 21. He's not letting people tackle him. He's spamming the B button and the stick. He's just not going down without a fight. He's the only one that really, truly, on the offensive side of the ball, came out to play. One player on the defense that we'll highlight is McKinney. I thought he had a pretty solid game. But Barkley, the dude doesn't quit. And that's what I love about him. That's what I love about Hope. And I hope that he's back next year because I'm starting to get feelings that he might not be. But the guy just – yeah, the guy just wants to play, and he showed up. He's the only one that I can truly say showed up and produced at a pretty damn good level, considering who he was going against and the circumstances that he was facing. One quarter into the game, he did not give up at all.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on that. I don't think there's any other things I think we can get into in that game. That game was just an absolute train wreck. You shrug it off. I don't agree with the Giants being clowned, though, because, as I say, I still think the Buffalo Bills loss is much worse than the Giants loss because considering the expectations. The Giants are just happy to be there. I really felt that they were playing with their house's money. Once they made the playoffs, they're playing with their house's money, man. Anything could happen. Even if we lost to the Vikings, you still be happy with the game. But they went and just played phenomenal football. I'm just delighted. It's been a long time to see it. It's been over 10 years. I've not seen a Giant playoff victory since 2011. It's been a long time. It was well worth this. I don't care about the Eagles game. I'm just so happy that we got to experience as a podcast, as content creators, and we're all one among a bunch of Giant content creators, that we got to see our team do really well on the year that we've done our show, and it's been a lot of fun, and we've met some great people, and we went to Florida and done a bunch of cool stuff with other Giant content creators. and other content creators in general. So I think there was just a really good year for us. And then you mix in the fact that the Giants showed up along with that. And so every week was fun. Every week covering them was fun. Everything was fun. So I'm overlooking the Eagles game. It was bad. We were overmatched. That can't happen again. If that happens again next year, then it's a different conversation. We're gonna have some difficult conversations. But on this occasion, I'm willing just to go, you know what? That team's just far better. Tip your cap. They're better in every department. We move on. But yeah. Let's get into the press conference because Joe Schoen and Brian Dable had a post-season, I guess you'd call it post-season, press conference. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, he said everything that I wanted to hear. He wants Daniel Jones back. He wants Saquon Barkley back. But he also was flat out truthful when he said, this is still a business, and it's not just going to happen. He basically, just to sum it all up, he was saying, we want these guys back, but it's going to be a process. They're going to negotiate with Daniel Jones. They're going to negotiate with Saquon. But they realize that even with the money that we do have next year, by bringing those two back, it's going to eat significantly into that cap space. So things are going to have to be done. He mentioned basically kind of like a slight at the old regime. If you go into free agency hungry, you're going to overspend. That was the word he used, or the term he used, basically saying Dave Gettleman did the past few years is not what we're going to do. He mentions that he wants to bring his guys back, the guys that are performing. He wants to, keep guys in-house, extend guys in-house. So Dexter Lawrence is definitely one that's going to get an extension. Andrew Thomas sooner than later. He's saying everything that I want to hear from the GM. He's not blowing smoke up our asses. He's saying, look, we want to do these things, but this is not an easy process. It's going to be, you got to be patient, based with something that we've all known. I want Daniel Jones back. Joe Schoen said he wants Daniel Jones back. Great. I want Saquon Barkley back. He said he wants Saquon Barkley back. Great. Now, will both of those things happen? That remains to be seen. But in terms of his overall comments, I loved it. I think it was exactly what I want to hear from the GM. We know that we're still, even with the playoff berth and a playoff win, this is still a rebuilding team because, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of this roster is not going to be here next year. We have a lot of free agents that I'm probably just going to let walk. You look at Adam Schefter posted our key free agents, and I think there were 2 or 3 of them that I'm like, I want to keep, and the rest I'd be perfectly fine if they left. So this roster will look different next year, a lot different. There's going to be a lot of familiar faces, but there's going to be a whole, like you said, maybe a third of this roster could be wiped clean and brought completely in new guys by the draft or low-tier free agent signings. So Joe Schoen, good press conference. I'm bought in. I've been bought in since he got here. Let's see what he can do. But first priority has to be getting Daniel Jones back, and I think the rest of the offseason can kind of follow suit from there. So the fact that he wants him back, and he kind of said, we're excited that Daniel's going to be here next year.
Yeah.
It kind of let me know that maybe there is something there. Maybe Boomer Esiason was right. maybe there is something there, and there's not. They haven't announced it yet. Maybe they got to work out some details, cap hit, whatever it may be. But they want DJ back, and I'm very happy to hear
that. So at the moment, the Giants have, I believe, 21 pending UFAs.
21.
So we'll fire through it quickly, right? And you give your keep or let go, right? Start with Saquon Barkley. Pretty easy.
Keep, yeah.
Keep, baby. Matt Breida.
I'm gonna say keep. I like the way they used him this year.
Yeah, I'd be willing to keep him. Landon Collins.
They didn't use him enough till the end. I'm going to say dump for now.
Yeah, he wasn't used at all against the Eagles. I think it was a coaching mistake because they over relied on some really bad inside linebackers in that game. I don't understand why they didn't use Landon Collins. He was coming into his own after the Colts interception, pick 6. Weird. But yeah, let go. Jared Davis, let go. Go, please. Justin Ellis, holy fuck daddies, he's bad. Woo!
Yeah, he's gone.
What about when when Dexter Lawrence had to be taken off the field for a couple of snaps, and then they just went after Justin Ellis and rode him like Seabiscuit. That was really rough to watch. He can go, please. John Feliciano.
Just because I don't know what they're going to do with Nick Gates, and unless they draft somebody in like the second round, which the center class is hit or miss kind of, I'm going to say keep because he did play pretty well towards the end of the year. And I guess if you're going to keep the quarterback, you might want to keep the center as well for the sake of continuity. So for now, I think we can get him pretty cheap. He's not going to cost you $6-7 million. I'm going to say keep, even if he's just depth.
I'm going to say please go. And Nick Gates.
I think we need him at this point.
Yeah.
And if they let Feliciano go, but one of those two they got to keep. I'm going to say keep as well for Gates.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So far for me, the only people I'm keeping, Nick Gates and Saquon Barkley, possibly Matt Breida. But you're willing to include Feliciano. Okay. Jamie Gillan.
Goodbye.
The Scottish Hammer, or I would call him the Hammer of Scotland. He has just embarrassed the Scottish name on World TV with his punning. Get the fuck out of here. Go back to Scotland.
Yeah, he's gone. I can't. There's got to be a better option out there, right? There has to be.
Well, if Gillen go back to Scotland, where are you sending Richie James?
England.
That's my favorite response. Yes. Even worse than Scotland. England. Yeah, send him there. As long as it's not frickin' New Jersey, that's for sure. Get him out of here. Tony Jefferson.
Go.
Yeah, go. Marcus Johnson.
Go.
Daniel Jones.
Keep.
Go. I'm kidding. He's staying. Casey Kreider.
Preseason Donald would have said go. Casey Kreider.
He's testing me against the Eagles, trust me. Casey Kreider, long snapper.
I guess keep. What's he going to sign for, like $4? I don't know what his
$4.50.
I don't know what his salary. He's got the league minimum. He can't. I get. He's a good long snapper. He's been here forever, so I'll keep him.
Yeah, I guess so. It makes no difference to me either way. Julian Love. This is more interesting.
If you're going by his Eagles performance, you'd say go. But everything else tells you to keep him. Depending on the price, though. Because this is a 4th-round pick that turned out to be a lot better than people thought he would be. I like Julian Love. Here's a pun, love Julian Love. So keep him. But depending on the money, I don't know how much he's going to command in free agency. I would try to keep him, though.
Okay. I get your point because actually he had over 100 tackles and his stats were pretty good. He's a good player, but considering the other needs, I think it's replaceable. So I'm willing to let him go. So I'm letting him go. Fabian Moreau.
I respect what he was able to accomplish this year, being a Texans cast-off. If Tony was in the chat, I'd laugh at him. But being a Texans cast-off and the fact that he was our number 2 corner and had to be number 1 for a little bit,
Yeah.
he didn't play like it when that was the case. But as a number 2 corner, he did just fine, in my opinion. But I think you can find a replacement for him in the draft. So I'm going to say go.
Yep. Agreed. Go. Sterling Shepard.
if he's healthy, which is a huge if. I think you can get him on a league minimum, but I don't see. I don't know. At this point, can you trust him? He's going to be 30. He's coming off of another ACL. I don't know. I love Sterling Shepard. And when he's healthy, there's not many that are like as crisp in their routes, and he's a reliable pair of hands. However, he just doesn't stay on the field, and it's such a shame that injuries derailed him because he would have been, to me, he was the Amani Toomer type for us. Good route runner. He was always making the catches that he needed to make. He was great in the slot. Injuries, man, just derailed him. So I guess go, but if they brought him back on a league minimum, I wouldn't be, fire Schoen. I'm not going to be upset.
Yeah, I think it's time. I mean, he's a great guy, great receiver, great talent. It's one of the sad stories, actually, of Giant football that we never saw a healthy Sterling Shepard in his career, because I think he would have done some good things here. But at the moment, I'm sorry, but he's kind of a glorified cheerleader at this stage. He's never healthy. He's a really good team dude, but it's a business, so we have to make business decisions. My business decision is to move on. Darius Slayton.
See, now I'm thinking about what they're going to do, because if we're letting Shepard walk, we're going to get Wandale back next year. We still have to re-sign Hodgins because he's an exclusive rights free agent, and they better bring him back. You only really have 2 receivers at that point. But Darius Slayton has been like our number 1 receiver in 3 of his 4 years already in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And people might pay a hefty, not I'm not going to say a hefty amount, but they might overpay for a guy like that because he does show signs, even though he drops a lot of passes. But I do think we could find a replacement for him in the draft / free agency as well for cheaper. So I'm going to say go, but he's another one of those players that if they brought him back at the right price, I'm not going to be upset about it. Because I agree. Darius Slayton.
I agree with you. Actually, the Giants don't make the playoffs without Darius Slayton.
Right.
He was great in the first half of the year. He peaked at that point, and then he came back to reality a little bit and dropped a lot of passes and didn't have too many good games in the second half of the year. But thank God for Isaiah Hodgins. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Darius Slayton was our number 1 receiver, and he added the speed option that our offense desperately lacked. He was the only dude that could beat guys over the top. So he deserves a lot of credit from us, and I tip my cap to the guy, and I wish him well in his future career elsewhere. Okay, Jalen Smith.
No.
No.
I don't think if it wasn't for the fact that McFadden and Beavers were rookies this year and Beavers was hurt and they're like guaranteed contracts next year, I think none of our middle linebackers should be back next year.
No.
None of them. But McFadden will be here and Beavers is going to come back from injury. But if that wasn't the case, I would say the entire room has to be cleared. The middle linebackers were by far the biggest weakness on this entire team. And it has been for quite some time.
Please go to the moon, ideally. Jihad Ward.
Keep.
Yep, I love Hattie. Hattie's my guy. I keep him. Nick Williams, defensive line.
Go. I think he was hurt this year, right?
Yeah, it sucked. O'Shane Zimenez, the X-Man.
After like the first 3 weeks, he just disappeared off the face of the earth, it seemed like.
He really did. It was like we were giving him credit for the first few weeks. We're like, wow, this is a new X-Man. And then he did the disappearing act.
Yeah, I'm gonna say go. You could find another O'Shane Zimenez in the 3rd or 4th round, like we did with him.
So yeah, we're pretty much in agreement. I mean, the only must keeps I think are Jones and Saquon. Willing to have a conversation regarding Love, but not really a priority for me, but it could be a priority for you. Nick Gates, I keep, and that's about it. I think everyone else can go, and that's what I'm saying.
I'm kind of teetering on Slayton. I'm like, go, keep. Because I feel like it all depends on what we want to do in the draft. Because I think if a guy like Trenton Simpson falls, which we could talk about the draft later on, but I don't know what route they want to go in the draft. Because if one of those big receivers somehow falls to 25, then you go receiver. But if that's not the case, Slayton is a favorite target of Daniel Jones. We'll have Hodgins back as ideally, and you'll get a healthy Wan'Dale Robinson. You add a fourth receiver that can be shifty as well in the slot alongside him. That's a decent group. It's better than what we had expected. At least better than what we were going with last year or this year for a little while. So I'm teetering with Slayton, but again, it all depends on his price.
What did you make of Joe Schoen's press conference where he was less effusive about Saquon Barkley, which was a surprise because after the game, Daniel Jones said, it's a business. He didn't even actually say whether he wanted to come back or not. He pressed a lot. Eventually, he kind of said, yeah, maybe, but he wasn't exactly falling over himself. He kept saying it was a business and they weren't really close to negotiations or whatever. And he was aware of how much quarterbacks are paid. He also answered that question. Saquon Barkley, on the other hand, said, I don't want to reset the market. I know my injury history. I just want to be a Giant for life. He's desperate to be a Giant for life. So after that, you think, wow, okay. Seems like Saquon's further along than Daniel Jones. But then we get to the press conference, and Joe Schoen was like, oh, yeah, Daniel Jones is staying. And Saquon Barkley, well, it's a business. We'll wait and see. That was surprising for me. Now, how would you prioritize it? Would you prioritize Saquon, prioritize Daniel, and would you look into too much of what Joe Schoen said in regards to Saquon's contract, Daniel Jones' contract?
I think you got to prioritize the quarterback first, simply because that's the most important position on the field. It's one of the most important positions, if not the most important position in sports. But this offense does not do anything remotely close to what it did this year without Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
We know they were trying to negotiate with Saquon at the bye. At some point during this year, they were trying to get him locked up. So they want him back. But I think Joe Schoen, what he was basically saying was, there's a lot more options with Barkley because you're not franchise tagging Daniel Jones. You can't. That's like a $43 million contract. You can't do that for 1 year. Where if you do it with Barkley, it's $10 million. You can transition tag Barkley, which wouldn't be too smart because you really wouldn't get anything. Then there's that non-exclusive tag where if another team gives an offer to Barkley, Giants don't match it, you get 2 first-round picks back. They can use that with Barkley as well. There's more options because running back salaries are far less than quarterback salaries. So you can obviously use 2 different tags. So they can use the franchise on Barkley and use the non-exclusive on Jones, vice versa. But I think there's more options because if Barkley, if you're going by market value, which don't take Spotrac for the end-all be-all, but they got Barkley at like $11.4 million. So even if he got like Derrick Henry type money, but according to some reports, he turned down $12 million a year. I don't really know what's true right now. So there's more options with Barkley because a franchise tag for 1 year, $10 million or so. And if he can repeat that performance from this year, then it's going to cost you more money. So you're kind of taking a risk. That non-exclusive tag is what they might be looking to do because if this other team says we're going to give him $12.5 million, the Giants could easily say, okay, we'll accept that and he's back with us. Or they let him walk and they get 2 first-round picks back. So I think there's more options with Barkley than there are with Jones in terms of the money. Because if you slap that franchise tag on Daniel Jones, your entire cap space is gone.
Luca's got a really good question here.
What is the back? Oh, my bad.
What's the backup plan if the Giants lose Jones? Are you really going to draft a quarterback with all the weaknesses on the roster? It's a very good point. But you could also say if the Giants overpay Daniel Jones, and that's probably the biggest thing because I don't think there's any way that the Giants are going to let Jones go. But if you look at his contract, what is he asking for? Because the quarterback market is fascinating considering like the pay structure. Murray is in the 40 mil range. Carr is in the 40 mil range. Prescott is in the 40 mil range.
Mahomes.
Well, yeah, I mean the elite.
Mahomes is like 50, right?
Yeah. Then you've got Ryan Tannehill's getting paid 27.5 mil, right? Where would you put Daniel Jones in that thing? Because if you put him up in the 40, I'm sorry, he's not going to perform like a $40 million quarterback per year. And the Giants are going to be hamstrung and they're not going to have any cap room to do anything. So it would need to be in the lower end of the scale. But is he going to accept that? Because he's better than Ryan Tannehill, who gets paid 27.5. But I wouldn't even pay Daniel Jones 27.5. I think he's in the 26 range. It's a real question. It's a significant question, and that's why my priority actually is Saquon Barkley, because I think it would be easier to tie that down. He wants 16. We won't pay him 16. We want to give him 12. Maybe meet in the middle. Maybe 13.5. 14. Call it good. Because for me, Saquon Barkley was our offense for the first, until after the Texans game, where he carried everything. And then finally Hodgins and Daniel Jones really started to pick it up. But for most of the year, it was the Saquon Barkley show. And I think that some people are maybe undervaluing what Saquon Barkley did this year. I've heard some podcasts where they were just like, oh, it's Daniel Jones. I'm thinking, was it really? I think you need to give him a little bit more credit to Saquon Barkley. So I want to get Saquon Barkley tied down. I love the guy. He was the only one that showed up against the Eagles, and that means something to me. So I tie him down. The Daniel Jones question is fascinating.
Right, because
I don't know what to do.
Right? Is there anyone that's going to be there at 25? Because think about the teams that are picking in the top of the draft. The Texans are going quarterback. The Colts are probably going to go They have to go quarterback. Carolina's picking ahead of us. They could certainly go quarterback. The Falcons need to go quarterback. The Raiders might need to go quarterback. So Anthony Richardson's the only player that people are like tying. The Giants the Giants could benefit from getting a quarterback on his rookie deal who has a ton of talent and could be a guy that, like Daniel Jones, blossoms at least a year or two in his career.
Yep.
However, you'd have to trade up to get him. You're going to have to trade up.
Anthony Richardson is not ready.
Right. So you're not getting Will Levis. Yeah. You're not getting Stroud. You're not getting Young.
Yeah. Just interrupt. He only completed 53% of his passes in college. So he's got a long way to go. He's got the talent. I think he's got a higher upside than Daniel Jones. I think you could maybe argue that. But he's got a much worse floor. Much worse. Like, I'm not ready to give up on Jones for Anthony Richardson. Right. And I think Richardson would go long before the mid-20s range anyway. So the quarterbacks I think that you like are like the C.J. Strouds, possibly a Will Levis, Bryce Young, but all of them are going to be gone in the top 10. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. So then do you want to go into free agency? And
Garoppolo?
Yeah, I mean, I quite like Jimmy G, but Daniel Jones is much better. So, I mean, Daniel Jones is coming back. It's just, can you really pay him?
I don't think he's going to get 40, but Spotrac has him at 25, which I think is not the case. He's going to be maybe they go in the 30 range, which is still a pretty hefty price, but that's what it's going to take to keep a quarterback nowadays. So if they would have took his 5th-year option, it would have been, what, 25 million, 26 million, something like that. He's going to want more than that, obviously, because like you declined my option, so I want to get more than what I would have been paid. But they're not going to give him 40 million because they're going to just franchise tag him if that's the case. So maybe like 33 or somewhere to like. I'm thinking 35 is like pushing it, but you might have to pay that just to keep the guy, unless he's really bought into this and he'll take a little bit of a tiny bit of a hometown discount to where you can keep some cap space to bring back Saquon and bring back Hodges and get him some new weapons. So we'll see if this is going to be a test to Joe Schoen. Can he entice Daniel Jones to maybe take a little bit less than people think he would to simply keep some money to build a better team around him? Because Joe Schoen said the plan is to keep Daniel Jones and build a team that can win a Super Bowl around him. So
we got about I think we're about 56 mil,
roughly 54,
in cap room, and I think it'll go up by cutting Golladay to maybe the 60s, maybe 70 range. But look at the contracts here. I've got it on over the cap, right? Aaron Rodgers is paid 50.2 average mil per year. That's insane. Russell Wilson, who was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, is paying 49. Let's ride. Bronco Nation, let's cry. Kyler Murray, who had an awful year, 46.1 mil per year. Patrick Mahomes, the GOAT, 45. Josh Allen, the elite, 43. Derek Carr, 40.4. Do I pay Derek Carr 40.4? No, not in a million years. Matt Stafford, 40, hurt all year. Dak Prescott, Mr. I can't do anything in the playoffs, 40 mil per year. Where his whole team wants him gone. And that's what I'm talking about. This is scary stuff. We're scary numbers. We're at Kirk Cousins, 35, which I believe is Daniel Jones' ceiling. 35 mil. Jared Goff, 33.5. That's Jared Goff, 33.5. Jared Goff had a better year than Daniel Jones. Carson Wentz, Mr. Overpaid, 32 million. Be a backup. Holy mackerel. This is all per year. It's actually Carson Wentz's contract is 128 million, but 32 mil per year anyway. Dreadful. Matt Ryan, 30 mil per year, who's about 50. Ryan Tannehill, 29.5. Tom Brady, 25. And then after that, it's like Baker Mayfield, 15. James Wilson, 14. Marcus Mariota, 9. Trevor Lawrence, 9. They were in the rookie contracts at this point. Okay, so that's the scale. Daniel Jones is better than a lot of these guys that I just mentioned. And they were all getting paid in the 40s, but I don't want to pay him like that. I mean, I think for me, Ryan Tannehill contract. Yeah, okay. Kirk Cousins at 35. Ryan Tannehill 29.5. Tom Brady 25.
Well, Brady had enough money at that point. He didn't really care. He took less to get more around him, which didn't work. But he's also 50, so.
I wouldn't pay Daniel Jones any more than what the Titans are paying Tannehill. I don't think Daniel Jones is worth even what Kirk Cousins is getting paid.
But the thing is, you might have to because he's still younger than he's like, what, 26? So you're going to get a good amount of years out of him still. He's better than Tannehill at this point. I don't know if he's better than Cousins, but that could be up for debate. I don't know, but again, the quarterback market's going to keep going up every year, and that's been proven with the.
But I think he's better than David Carr, who's getting paid 40 odd. He's much better than Russell Wilson, who's getting paid 40 freaking 9. I mean, my God, it's scary.
So they're going to have to get. I think if you give him 35, that might have to be the limit. But has he played like a 35 million a year quarterback? No. But that's something you have to decide if you're Joe Schoen, because you need to bring back the quarterback.
He's had 1.5 good years in his contract.
Right.
Do you pay that $40 million a year? No.
But do you think about the fact that when he had a semi-decent offensive-minded coach in 2019, he had a solid year statistically. And then this year, first year with Daboll, he had his best year. He cleaned up a lot of things that were issues with him throughout his entire career.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you want to include the Garrett years, because it was such an ancient offense they were running that any quarterback that found success in that would have been a $50 million a year quarterback. So,
Yeah.
oh, who's mom in the chat? No, not 35 million. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, I'm like saying 35, that's a lot, because that's basically leaving you with 20 million. Now, you're going to be able to create space. You mentioned Galladay, a post-June cut, 13.5 million comes off the cap, but it does add a lot of dead cap. They're going to have to do it. You can extend Leonard Williams, could free up anywhere from like 10 to 14 million. You can extend Adoree Jackson, can free up maybe a 4 or 5 million. So you can make cap space, which they're going to have to do. You should extend Adoree Jackson, first of all, because he's your best cornerback. He's one of your best players on defense. Leonard Williams, if you cut him, the dead cap's going to be way too much to overcome. So, and they're not going to trade him. No one's going to take $32 million for 1 year of Leonard Williams. So you might have to extend him. These are things that Joe Schoen, which is why
Leonard Williams did say he'd be willing to take a pay cut. He did say after the
he did. So, yeah. But these are still, there's still ramifications of the Gettleman years that Joe Schoen is going to have to pay the price for, which is why we have to be able to be patient. Even though this is going to be year 2 now, and we have some cap space, there's still things that we have to get through in order before this thing really starts to take shape, because there's a lot of money that has to come off the books. And even Galladay's dead cap would go into 2024 by cutting him this year. So these are things you have to look at, but they have to find ways to create money, because you have to pay the quarterback. There's nobody in free agency or the draft that would fall to us, or that would be there at 25 that's better than Jones. There's nobody in free agency that I'm saying is going to be cheaper and then I'm taking over Jones. It's not Dalton. It's not even Jimmy G, because he's coming off of injury. It's not Jameis Winston. It's none of these guys. So you're probably going to have to overpay a little bit to bring back Jones. So that's the thing. Do I go 35? Probably not, but will they have to go 35 simply to make sure he's back for the next 3-4 years? You might have to. So that's the thing that Joe Schoen has to figure out.
It's just, I also trust that Brian Daboll's the quarterback whisperer. And maybe you trust that if Daniel Jones' contract goes a little bit too high. We'll wait and see regarding that. I mean, Jones, his QBR was terrific. His QBR was absolutely terrific this year. Statistically, in terms of passing numbers, it's pretty average. 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. 5 picks is amazing. 15 touchdowns is kind of below average. 3,200 yards is okay, but then 700 yards rushing was terrific. So it was 92.5 QBR, which certainly puts him in the top 10. But are you going to pay him like a top 10 quarterback? You know, his yards was 15th, touchdowns, 21st in the league.
Yeah.
Interceptions was 3rd in the league. QBR, 7th in the league.
And you're thinking about what he had to deal with, losing his entire depth chart within 3 weeks. The offensive line being a rotation, basically. Your first round pick rookie gets hurt, struggles. You had Tyree Phillips out there. You had Jack Anderson starting a week at guard. You had Glowinski struggled early on. He got better as the season went on. Feliciano was terrible to start the season. He got a little bit better. The receivers that weren't there, he was throwing to David Sills and Richie James and Marcus Johnson for a couple of weeks. He was throwing to Lawrence Cager, who was a wide receiver turned tight end, Nick Vannett, Chris Myrick. He made a lot of things happen with not a lot of talent around him. Is that worth $35 million? I still don't know. But again, and it's something that Honu's mom brought up in the chat. I don't see this happening. 20 million, and then it gradually goes up. They might have to for
idea. I mean, you could have it where like it's
backloaded
a reasonable number in year one in order to have cap room, but then you could have it where the pay scale goes up in the latter part of the contract. You maybe backload it in order to have the cap room to rebuild the roster in year one. That's a possibility, Hanu's mom.
Do we have good? Brock Purdy is such a perfect fit in San Francisco's offense because they have the best left tackle, not named Andrew Thomas in football, and Trent Williams. They have a good offensive line in general. They have weapons up and down the roster. Mm-hmm. He fits that offense so perfectly that the fact that the last pick in the draft is finding success tells you that most quarterbacks can probably – they had 3 quarterbacks this year play for them, even though Trey Lance kind of struggled, but Garoppolo played fine. Brock Purdy's playing fine. I still don't think they're going to move forward with Purdy. I think if next year it's going to be Trey Lance when he's healthy, but
I'd go with Purdy, man. After what he's done, Trey Lance has shown me nothing. But I agree with you. I see your point. I think Trey Lance is a better upside, but Brock Purdy is just he's shown up every single week. He's putting up numbers and he's doing his thing.
They gave up so much to get Lance, so I don't think they give up on him that quickly. That's the thing. But I don't think we're gonna get somebody like Honu's mom brought up here that we can pick up someone in like the 4th or 5th round and be like they can do what Daniel Jones did. So again, it's such a big question. It always is with the quarterback position. You're gonna have to pay him, and it's gonna be a number that a lot of us probably don't like. But if Joe Schoen can get him to do something like was brought up early with a lower cap hit in year one and then it goes up just to save some money right now. Because we're going to have more cap as the seasons go on. The cap's going to keep going up. So maybe you do something like that with Daniel Jones. Take it where, okay, year one will pay you what the year 5 option would have been, maybe a little bit more. And then it goes up to like 30 some odd million. That's a potential. But it does sound like they're close because Joe Schoen almost let it slip in the press conference. So we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah. I do think that Barkley should be back. Yeah. I do think at the end of the day, Jones and Barkley will be back. But if I had to pick one that would leave or that could leave, it would be Barkley because I just don't think they're going to let Jones walk.
Yeah, because what's the alternative? Daniel Jones has earned another shot. But the question for me, before we go to our final pick segment and then close the show, Dak Prescott is the warning. The Cowboys overpaid him significantly, and now they're in cap hell. And what's their upside? They've got a really good team, but they just can't get over the top. And their quarterback has been average, and they can't break through. And I don't think they ever will. This is them, and now they don't really have any cap room. So that is the warning. They've overpaid this guy. So is Daniel Jones better than Dak Prescott? Some would argue yes, some would argue no. They're kind of in the same tier. They're in the same conversation. So with that, you have to bear that in mind. You don't want to overpay Daniel Jones and get above average production at best. Because then you can't build a roster around him. You need a roster around him to produce. So I don't know what the answer is. I think we can all agree that it should be in the range between 27 and about 33, 34. I think in that range, I think you can maybe figure something out. Any more than that, and I'm sorry, I go to Brian Dable and say, dude, be a quarterback whisperer and find someone that you feel that you can work with. He worked with Tyrod Taylor way back when as a starter, and he was fine. So I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, Brian Dable is the quarterback whisperer. So clearly, I fully trust him. moving forward. Let's get our final pick segment in, and then we'll close out the show.
So last week, I was 4 for 4 because I picked the Eagles to win. And I missed one. Yeah, I missed one pick so far this postseason. I picked Tampa Bay to beat Dallas. So I'm riding pretty high right now with my picks. So
I think I'm one behind you. Am I one behind you?
Because you had the same picks as me, except for you picked the Giants to beat Philly.
And that was, again, delusion. Complete delusion, Donald. Delusion.
So we go into the championship.
Now there's no bias for me to lose my picks.
I just want to get into a couple of comments here. Honu's mom says, Jerry Jones is an idiot. Well, it's Jerry Jones. He looks like an idiot. But Donald brings up a great point, though, because Dallas right now is in a tough position because they're paying a lot to the quarterback and the running back, and they're not winning. So you do have to keep in mind what Dallas is going through and hope the Giants don't fall into that same category because Dallas has too much talent to be losing in the playoffs every year the way they do. Too much talent. The Lions quarterback used to – Goff.
Yeah, they overpaid Goff too.
But Goff has found a new home in Detroit, and boy, is he making it good because he's been fantastic. So championship weekend, we got 2 games before we get to the big dance, 49ers and Eagles. It's in the link. That's going to be a fun one, though. I hope San Francisco puts up more of a fight than we did. I'm going to take Philly.
I'm taking Philly, too. Didn't want to do it, but I just – looking at the way that, to be honest, Dallas should have beaten San Francisco, but Dak Prescott threw them out of that game. San Francisco's defense looks sensational, but they didn't really move the ball that great against the Cowboys.
And now they got
Eagles. Eagles' offense is ridiculous. It's redonkulous. It's completely insane. And if you look at the way that the E-Girls beat the brakes out of the Giants, they look better in every position. They go San Francisco. Do I think Brock Purdy is going to take them to a Super Bowl? I'm going to say no. So I'm going to go Eagles.
I'd be surprised if I'd be fucking thrilled if they did, but I just don't see them being.
We want San Francisco to win. I just think that the Eagles will.
Now this is the one that's going to be the fun watch. Bengals Chiefs. Oof, this is the game. I think this is the game that we all wanted because I had the Bengals winning the whole thing at the start of the season. They were my pick. They're one win away from getting there. Again, Joe Breezy. Does he get it done? Does he beat the Chiefs? Again, does he beat the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl for a second straight year? I say he does.
I'm going to say you think he does.
I'm taking Cincinnati.
You're sticking with Cincinnati all the way. I love Cincinnati. I absolutely love Cincinnati. I've loved them since they drafted Joe Burrow. I love their roster. Love everything about them. I love Joe Burrow. Dude's the GOAT. And the fact that he looked so unfazed in the tundra of Buffalo, and he was just like he was just in the backyard, just like throwing perfect spiral, 60 yards in a snowstorm. Joe Burrow is absolutely elite, like GOAT level, phenomenal. Love the guy. Too cool for school. If the Bengals do well, I'd be delighted. If they make the Super Bowl, I'll be rooting for them, obviously. Regardless, even if the Eagles even if it wasn't the Eagles and the 49ers, it was someone else, I would still go the Bengals. I love the Bengals team so much, but I'm going to go the Chiefs. The Bengals now have beaten the Chiefs every single time at Arrowhead, right? Every single time the Bengals beat the pants out of the Chiefs. Are they going to do it again? That's a lot. I'm going to go with the GOAT himself, Patrick Mahomes, the human highlight reel, the God himself, my guy, Patty. He's going to do it. But it's tough because I love the Bengals team, as you know. But I love both teams. I love Bengals and the Chiefs. So give me the Chiefs, and it should be a lot of fun. How fun would a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl be? Would those offenses
take the fandom away from it? Yeah, that's probably to me, the best Super Bowl matchup possible involves the Eagles being in the game.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
any one of these AFC teams is going to give them a run.
Yeah.
Now, who I think is the best option to take down Philly? At this point, I'd probably say Mahomes just because he can go toe-to-toe with anybody.
Yeah.
But considering my pick was the Bengals at the start, they haven't let me down yet. I can't go against them at this point, even though it is against Patrick Mahomes. You got a matchup of quite possibly the two best quarterbacks in the NFL right now going at it Sunday. So
it's a dream matchup.
It really is.
I almost wish that was the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Because that is the best matchup. The two best teams in football for me are the Chiefs and the Bengals. Nothing taken away from you.
So you got Eagles, Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I got Bengals, Eagles in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So we'll see. Because this could potentially bring you back in our playoff picks. Because if you get this one right, then we'll go into the Super Bowl tied.
In fairness, people that are paid a ton of money have already flatlined in their playoff picks. We're in the 90 percentile. You're 100 percentile. So you're in 90 percentile too. So
damn Cowboys.
So I mean that's kick-ass stuff. So I'm pretty proud of our playoff picks. I think we're doing really, really well.
We've done pretty good overall the entire season. I would say.
Have.
We've had pretty good picks. So maybe
I just got a little bit. I don't know. I think I overestimated the Giants against the Eagles, and I regret that now.
Well, I had us losing by like 2 points, so
yeah,
we ended up losing by 30.
We lost about 200.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is
about just about 600 points. Anyhow, this was a fun show. Thank you to Onu's mom for hanging with us. Thank you to Luca earlier on, popped in the chat. And to anyone who's going to catch this on the on-demand version when it goes on YouTube, be sure to hit that like button, give the thumbs up, hit subscribe so you can get more Giants content just like this, because we're going to be breaking down a lot of stuff this offseason when it comes in full force, when we get to free agency, cuts, draft. Can't wait for the draft season because that is going to be fun. We're going to do some mock drafts, and like we did last year, going to break down some prospects, who we think. We're going to do some playful mock drafts. We're going to do an official mock draft, hopefully. See what we're doing for it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a wild offseason, and we're going to be here for it.
And next episode is awards. Let's get our awards, baby.
Season awards. Yes.
Season awards.
It's going to be fun. So thank you very much for watching. Be sure to do all the good stuff. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Follow those links in Twitter to follow us on the Twitter sphere. Follow Alex and Luca, Angry John, all the guys from the Boys in the Big Apple. Make sure to do that as well. We thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all very soon. Let's go, Giants. Peace out.